Good evening. As I speak, 3 incident rooms around the country are standing by to receive your calls. In Maidenhead, they hope you've seen something that will lead them to the killer of Shani Warren. In Weston-Super-Mare, police need to trace 70 potential witnesses to the murder of Helen Fleet. And in Stockport, detectives are looking for a rapist who's committed 6 offences in the last 3 months.
As always, senior investigating officers are here too, and you can ring them live here in the studio. Here's the number, 01 811 8055. It's in strictest confidence, and if you prefer, you can talk to a BBC researcher.
And it really works. Last month, we reconstructed a horrific robbery on a gun shop in Hinckley in Leicestershire. The owner, Helen Fleet, was a British Olympic marksman. In one of the most callous crimes we've ever reported, once the robbers had tied him up and stolen guns and ammunition, they poured petrol on him and set him alight. In fact, he escaped with his life only because the fire eventually burned through the ropes that held him. Well over 100 calls came through that night, and next day one viewer rang the incident room direct with crucial information. That same evening, as a direct result, 2 men were arrested in Leicester, and 5 days later a 3rd man was found in Edinburgh. All 3 have now been charged with attempted murder and robbery. And incidentally, Helen Fleet is still seriously ill under intensive care at Birmingham Burns Unit.
Well, also last month, we showed a photograph of a solicitor, Peter Denby. He was once an aide to Enoch Powell and a friend of the former MP, Harvey Proctor. Detectives have been hunting him since June last year, when policemen in central London were held at gunpoint. They thought Peter Denby might have been driving the gunman's car. A Crimewatch viewer recognised our picture, and Peter Denby was arrested after a dawn raid on a home at Richmond in North Yorkshire. He has now been charged with conspiracy to assault, threatening a police officer and assisting an offender.
Another appeal last month was for a man who carried out 3 robberies on 2 building societies in Essex. We showed pictures from a security camera, and no less than 3 prison officers rang separately with information. As a result, police have arrested and charged a man from Kentish Town in North London.
No results to report yet following our other 2 reconstructions last month. Daniel Morgan was a private detective who was killed in the car park of this pub in South London. After watching our reenactment, a woman called and spoke to the detective in charge of the case. Superintendent Campbell has asked us to appeal to that woman to call again. She obviously did want to help, so please do call. It is in confidence, and the number is 01 811 8055. Or you can call Sydenham Police Station, and that is 01 697 9497. And in a suburb of Watford in Hertfordshire, 2 men posing as telephone engineers stole paintings by Caffieri, valued at a total of £50,000. There were 87 calls as a result, and one of them, police operation, is now currently underway, and obviously at the moment we can't say any more about that.
News from back in January, when we showed a security video of an armed robbery at a building society in Shoreham in Sussex. After an anonymous call from a Crimewatch viewer, 2 men were arrested and charged in connection with the crime. And on the incident desk in March, we showed a picture of an elderly man who'd attempted armed robberies both at a Baker Street building society and at a jeweller's in Old Bond Street in London. A Crimewatch viewer called with a name. It wasn't, though, until last Monday that a man was arrested, and he's been charged with both offences.
Finally, you may recall a film we showed also in March last year about the murder of Steve Whitnell, a supermarket manager at Putney in southwest London. A fortnight ago at the Old Bailey, 1 man was jailed for life for Mr Whitnell's murder, and 2 others were each given 13 years for manslaughter. And I should say that the evidence for these convictions did not result from calls to Crimewatch, but at least 1 viewer did help to confirm the name and address of one of the robbers.
Please now try to think back to what you were doing on the afternoon and the evening of Good Friday. Sometime on that first day of the Easter bank holiday, someone murdered a young woman by drowning and left her in a lake just outside Maidenhead in Berkshire. Now, you'll have read about it, the Shani Warren case. It was one of those crimes that capture the front pages. In part, that was because Shani was young, blonde and photogenic. But you may recall the headlines were fuelled by an unfortunate public suggestion by one detective that Shani may have committed suicide, and that despite the fact Shani had been gagged and bound hand and foot. In fact, the night before the murder, Shani, far from suffering depression, had seemed positively happy.
Good evening.
On the Thursday before Easter, Roger Pell, an old boyfriend of Shani's, had gone out with her for dinner in Maidenhead. They'd not met for several months. She'd rung him out of the blue. But they both enjoyed the evening and arranged to meet again.
In fact, you can do it like this.
She seemed as happy and relaxed as ever.
I'll learn to master these, I will.
Despite her late night, Shani was up early on Good Friday and drove to Gerrard's Cross to her parents' home. She'd arranged to pick up an extension lead for her electric lawnmower. Shani was 26, the youngest of 3 children. Her father, Joe, works from home. Her mother had gone that Easter weekend to the family flat in Bournemouth, where Joe and Shani were due to join her on Sunday lunchtime.
Here's the lead. I've put a plug on it for you.
Oh,
and,
thank you, Dad.
That should be long enough for what you want.
Great, thank you.
Just as she left, she wondered who should do the driving when they went down to Bournemouth on Sunday to join her mother. Her father agreed he'd pick Shani up from home.
Okay.
Okay, Dad.
Bye-bye.
See you Sunday.
Okay, sweet.
Take care.
Drive carefully.
I will. See you Sunday.
Shani lived just 10 minutes from her parents at Stoke Poges near Slough. It took her till early afternoon to mow both the back lawn and the front. She planned to take the clippings to the compost heap at her parents' home. Shani shared her house with 2 lodgers, Katie and Fiona. All 3 girls pottered round that afternoon, and Shani seemed to have no firm plans for the evening.
Well, I was tidying my room. It must have been about 6 o'clock in the evening. I glanced outside of the window and Shani was putting the grass cuttings in the black bin liners into the back of her car. She got in the car and drove off down the close.
Just as Shani drove off, her mother phoned from Bournemouth but missed her. She never got the chance to speak to her again. 5 miles from Shani's home at the Taplow Lake lay-by on the A4 outside Maidenhead. At about 10 to 7, someone saw a black car which seemed to be in difficulty. The lay-by is used regularly as an overnight truck stop.
About 1:30, 1:45, I came into the lay-by from the far end. I saw the car, so I dipped my lights thinking it was a courting couple. Drove past it, reversed in behind it, and the car was still there. As I came to put a padlock on the back of my trailer, I noticed the door wasn't shut properly, but didn't think anything more of it, so I just went home then.
The next morning, the driver, Donald Ward, returned to his trailer.
It struck me as being odd that someone would leave an A-registered car with the door obviously not locked, but I assumed that it had broken down and that whoever owned it had gone for a recovery vehicle of some sort. But other than that, I didn't pay any great attention to it.
Many Easter drivers may have stopped on this section of the A4. The lay-by is just 5 minutes from the centre of Maidenhead on the London side. If you did stop or even pass there, you might have seen the car. And the Paddington-Reading railway line also gives a good view of the lay-by. Some 50 trains went past here between 6 and 9 p.m. on that Good Friday. The car was still here the following afternoon.
Me and my wife Carol was coming down this lane, Easter Saturday, about 2 o'clock-ish, 1:30, 2, and we saw the black Vauxhall. And the door was open about 1 to 2 inches. And we just rode past, and about 45 minutes later we turned round and came back, and the car was still there.
At 6:30, a woman walking her dog discovered Shani's body floating face down in the lake. She'd been gagged. Her feet had been loosely bound with her own tow rope. A jump lead was round her hands behind her back. The other jump lead, later found in the lake, had been fastened round her neck. Shani died by drowning. Forensic tests have failed to establish time of death, but it seems likely she died on the Good Friday evening. When police examined the Cavalier, the driver's seat was reclined and a blank card in an envelope was on the floor. Shani's lighter was on the passenger seat. In front, on the floor, were the empty grass sacks and her watch. And under the steering column was an Easter egg intended for Roger Pell. Nearby, in the undergrowth, they found Shani's credit card holder, her tow rope bag, and a thank you card to Roger for the dinner on that Thursday night. When the police tried to move the car, they found it had gearbox problems. The Cavalier's shift selector had slipped, and it could only be driven in 3rd and 4th gear. The detective now in charge of the case is Superintendent John Childerley. Let's get this clear. We are now talking about a murder inquiry, not a suicide.
We have always dealt with this as a murder inquiry from the very outset.
Right. Now, there's no definite motive, is there?
No, there is no injury to the body, there is no property that's been stolen, so there is no obvious murder.
Yet there must have been thousands, literally thousands of potential witnesses. This is Good Friday, this is the A4. There must have been thousands of people driving up and down between, well, after the hour of about 6 p.m. on that Friday evening.
Yes, and we are interested in anybody who drove past that lay-by from 6 p.m. on Good Friday evening. As you say, it was a very busy period. We would like particularly anybody who saw vehicles driving into or out of the lay-by to come forward, anybody who saw the black Cavalier in the lay-by, and anyone acting suspiciously in the area. Just
so that people can get a fix on what that lay-by is, it's just the London side of Maidenhead. It's actually a road in itself, isn't it? In fact, it was originally the A4.
It's the old A4, which has now been bypassed and consists of about 300 yards of old road.
In particular, obviously you want anybody who has seen a car broken down there, anybody who went into that lay-by. There was a car seen broken down about a couple hundred yards away, wasn't there?
Yes, there was a black saloon car about 200 yards Maidenhead side of the lay-by with the bonnet up and a man looking under the bonnet. We'd be interested to trace this man because this car may in fact have been Shani's vehicle, or if it not, we want to eliminate it.
Right. Now there are a whole series of other things. She may have well, she must have dumped the grass cuttings somewhere. Now, thousands of people would have dumped grass cuttings on Good Friday. They'll have been out mowing their lawns. Anybody who looked like Shani, you want to trace?
Well, Shani was a very attractive young lady, a blonde 26-year-old, driving a very smart car, and the sort of person you would have looked at twice. We have no sightings of Shani at present time from after she left home at 6 o'clock.
She might, of course, have been seen making a phone call as well.
That's a possibility. If the car broke down in that lay-by, there are 2 phone boxes about a quarter of a mile either side of the lay-by where she could have made a call.
This is a replica of a fob and her keyring. These are missing, the original missing.
They are indeed, and we would like to trace these keys. We've made a search of the lake and the surrounding area, and it may be that someone has come across these keys and disposed of them, or perhaps they even know somebody who's got them in their possession, and obviously we'd be very interested in that.
John Childerley, thank you very much indeed. If you think you can help in any way, particularly if you've got any suspicions about anyone who acted oddly that night, it's Good Friday, remember. If you might have seen something relevant, if you have any thoughts, please don't just keep things to yourself. Our number, 018118055. This is live, so the detectives are here right now. Or you can ask for the Shani Warren Incident Room on Slough 31282. That's 0753, the code for Slough, 31282.
Well, next now is Incident Desk, where we invite the police to appeal to you directly. Here are Constable Helen Phelps and Superintendent David Hatcher.
We start this month with a murder in central London. Alicia Lamoth was 26. She was from the Philippines and she'd been in England just over a year. She had several cleaning jobs, including one regular one at 33 Cork Street in Mayfair, where she normally started at 7:30 in the evening. At 8:30 p.m. on Friday the 8th of May, she phoned a friend to say she'd nearly finished and would be leaving soon. But just after 10, the fire brigade was called when smoke was seen pouring from the building. Alicia's body was found on the 4th floor. She died from colossal head injuries. Whoever attacked her took over £500 from the office and 2 small tape recorders. One was an Olympus like this. It had the serial number 220491. And the second was a G mark for recording telephone calls. Alicia's handbag and a pair of blue shoes with white rubber soles were also missing. Her handbag had about £45 and a London bus pass in it. Alicia's murderer may have all or any of these in his possession. If you've seen them, please call us. And if you saw Alicia arriving at Cork Street on Friday the 8th of May, or anyone leaving there between 8:30 and 10 p.m, then we'd like to hear from you.
Take a look at this model ship. It was carved by French Napoleonic prisoners of war out of meat bones from their rations. It's valued at about £20,000 and is just one of 37 historic pieces which were stolen from a museum near Lewes in Sussex last week. The museum's in this 16th century house. It was given to Anne of Cleves, Henry VIII's 4th wife, as part of their divorce settlement. Thieves broke in a week ago yesterday and took 28 pieces of silver, including this solid silver trophy, which was presented at Lewes races in August 1868, and an 18th century mahogany clock with the name of the maker T. Harben engraved on it. This ladder was found hidden in a nearby garage. It looks as though it's homemade, and someone's written "sold ×5" here with a felt-tip pen. The total value of the haul from the Anne of Cleves Museum was £100,000. Ring us if you can help.
John Robinson from Lancaster has just come out of hospital where he was recovering from injuries he received from an appalling attack in his own home. Between 1:45 and 2 a.m. on Friday the 10th of April, he was woken by the sound of breaking glass in his house near Rylands Park in Lancaster. As he woke up, someone attacked him in the bedroom with a hammer and a knife. It was lucky his children weren't hurt too, and it was a miracle that Mr. Robinson survived. The hammer was a 1.5-pound ball peen hammer like this, and it had red tape on it here. The other weapon was a fishing knife, identical to this one. It was sharp on one side and dull on the other. The attacker escaped across Rylands Park and over the railway bridge. From there, he followed the cycle track towards Morecambe. He would have been heavily bloodstained, and he was probably quite badly cut himself. So if you live anywhere in the Lancaster area, think back to the night of the 9th, 10th of April and ring us if you think you know who did it.
You may remember on Crimewatch in March, our antiques expert, John Bly, showed a collection of stolen fireplaces. Incidentally, they've so far remained unclaimed. Well, this month we've news of the theft of what must be one of the finest examples of decorative marble fireplaces in this country. It was designed by Charles Adam in the late 18th century and is worth £30,000. Until recently, it was an integral part of this building in New Cavendish Street in central London. It's owned by the Building Employers Confederation. The thieves broke into the building through a sash window on the ground floor and incredibly chiselled the whole fireplace out of the wall. It weighs half a tonne, so they had to dismantle it and carry 9 huge pieces of marble out through the front door. We reckon there's now a lucrative trade in these classic marble fireplaces. So if you can help us find this one, please ring.
Finally, some pieces of jewellery and silver which would only be worth a few pounds but must have been very precious to the people who lost them. Each one has a personal motto or mark. First, a golden wedding ring, which simply says, "With love, Charles."
What about this cross? It looks like a confirmation gift. It says Maria Story, 9377.
These silver christening spoons are both engraved with the name Astrid, and she must be 68 by now because there's a date on the back, 7th of December, 1919.
And perhaps this was a special Christmas present. It says, Mum, with love, Xmas 81.
We've got some gold cufflinks with the initials OP on them, and some silver ones with J and F.
This silver bracelet looks like an 18th or 21st birthday present. It's inscribed Dave, and on the back, Love Mum and Dad, July 1972.
Now there's a set of spoons inscribed with something that looks like an S, and J.A. Dahl has lost his serving spoon.
And finally, look at this miniature portrait of an 18th century gentleman. The name on the back is Thomas Moss. Be wonderful if any of his descendants rang us tonight. But do call us if you recognise any of these items.
The number you must know almost by heart, 01811 8055. That's 01811 8055.
6 weeks ago at Poynton in Cheshire, a 16-year-old girl was raped. It was only after she reported the attack that another woman came forward to say that she too had been raped only 6 miles away in Stockport back in February. The police there are now certain that the same man was responsible for both attacks, and they've since found evidence of 4 other attempted offences. It's quite clear that until this man is found, other women are at risk. In our reconstruction of one of the attacks, we show the way in which the man gains the confidence of his victim. We do that as a warning to women in the area and to build up a picture of the rapist. We've taken pains to protect the victim's anonymity using an actress who bears no resemblance to her and changing the location of her home.
Saturday 21st of February, the Edgeley district of Stockport. At 7:45 that evening, a woman set out to go to a pub in Cheadle for a birthday party. It was a few minutes' walk via Dale Street to Edgeley Road. From the bus stop by Alexandra Park, she'd be able to get a number 371 to Cheadle Hulme. She got to the bus stop at about 8 o'clock. After a couple of minutes, a car came juddering round the corner from Dale Street, as if it was breaking down. The woman remembered the car was actually dark-coloured, and she thinks it was probably a Ford Cortina.
Excuse me, love. You don't know where the nearest garage is, do you?
Oh, it's a bit further down on Edgeley Road.
Oh, is it? It's just that I can fix it myself, you know. I just need someone to sit in the car and help me that way. You wouldn't mind, would you, love?
Well, my bus will be here in a minute.
I'll give you a lift if you like.
Oh, no, I don't want a lift. No, I'll help you if you won't be long.
Of course I won't be long. Do as you're told, and you won't get out.
He drove her away down the Edgeley Road towards Cheadle. The woman was driven to this demolished factory site at Cheadle Old Road. The journey lasted just 3 minutes, but on the way she noticed some work tools on the front passenger seat, which he tried to hide. Throughout, the victim was held at knife point. He said, "I just want you to be a witness to something." Then he stopped the car here and raped her. It's the sort of spot only someone who's familiar with the area would be likely to know. It seems a man must either live in the area now or have done so at some time in the past. The second rape on the 9th of April happened here at Poynton on the outskirts of Stockport. The method was identical. A young girl walking home late at night was lured into a car by a man who said he'd broken down and needed help. She was threatened with a knife and driven from Commercial Road in Stockport 4 miles to this quiet country road. The entire incident took just 30 minutes. After the rape, she was blindfolded and left abandoned. She couldn't tell which direction the car took as it drove away, but she then ran up this road, Anson Road, back towards Stockport. 2 or 3 cars actually passed her along here, and although she was clearly distressed, they didn't stop. She finally got help at this cottage just around the corner.
Alexandra Park, that's the location of the first one. We've done these houses along.
An instant room was set up the next day, and officers there have been checking the information that's come in from local people against the detailed statements they've now got on the 2 rapes and the 4 approaches. The officer who interviewed the second victim says she remembers some vital details, but it was painful for her to do so.
She started off quite easy and telling me about how she'd helped him out and got in the car. And as she got to the more intimate details about the rape, she was just bottling it all up and kept crying and getting really upset. And it was very difficult to actually get it out of her because she just wanted to not think about it. It took a long time.
What does she think about this man?
I've spoken to her and she's really worried about seeing him again. And first of all, she said that when she had to do the photo fit after the incident, actually seeing his face coming to life in front of her absolutely terrified her, it devastated her.
It's over a month ago since it happened. How is she coping with it now?
On the surface, she seems to be coping with it very well. I think underneath, it's devastated her. And she's only 16 and she's a nice girl, and it's a lot to get over.
Well, Daryl Waring, are you absolutely certain now that all these attacks and these 2 rapes were all by the same man?
He's used the same technique on each occasion. There may be other women out there whom he's approached in the same way. If that is so, I'd like to hear from them.
What has his method of approach been, in fact?
He's brought the car to a standstill and simulated a breakdown, or he's parked the car in a side street with the bonnet up and made it look as if the car has broken down.
So, as you said, the attacks have all been very close together. Perhaps if we could look at our micromap, you can tell me, first of all, where the 2 rapes took place.
There's been a rape at Poynton in Cheshire, one about 8 miles away in Edgeley, Stockport, and a number of approaches within the Stockport district, within a radius of about 6 miles.
And the 4 other attacks?
They've all been approaches to women in the same manner.
And there are motorways and main roads all round there. There's the M63 there and the M56. Are you absolutely sure he's a local man?
I can't discount the fact that he could have come in from the motorways, but I'm minded with this particular case to look to a local man.
And you've been given a very good description of him, so that's hopeful. Can you describe him for us? Do a video fit?
Yes, he's about 25 to 35 years of age, 5'10" to 6 foot tall. He's moderate to athletic build, got a round face, and I'm particularly interested in his hair because I have reason to believe it's lightish brown and it's been streaked, and I understand that that streaking may have been done when he had his hair styled on the 9th of April.
How do you know that?
He was seen on the 8th of April by a woman whom he approached. On that occasion he was unkempt, his hair was unkempt. The following day when he committed the rape, the woman says that his hair was styled and it had been streaked.
So maybe local hairdressers might recognise him.
Yes, if there is a local hairdresser who remembers this man and having styled his hair, I'd be keen to hear from her.
Now, one of the victims describes seeing an assortment of tools on the front passenger seat of the car.
The victim of the rape in Edgeley saw tools on the front passenger seat, and one of those was a ball-peen hammer similar to that. There were 2 or 3 other tools, wooden handled, which may indicate that this man had been doing some work in the neighbourhood.
Right, and he had dirty fingernails, and so he could maybe have been a mechanic, because there are certainly different descriptions of the car he was driving.
That's right. On that occasion he did have fingernails which indicated he may have been doing some manual work.
Right, and there was a sticker in the front windscreen, so we could have a look at. That was the car that the victim thought she was the first victim.
The sticker, in fact, was in the windscreen of the rape at Poynton, the car that was used on the rape at Poynton. That was in the centre of the windscreen, at the base, close to the dashboard. The sticker was in a very unusual position and may, in fact, have obscured his view as a driver.
Because most victims thought they saw a sort of hatchback car.
That's right. The hatchback type of vehicle is the type I'm interested in, a small Fiesta style.
And maybe with a sticker in the front windscreen.
Yes.
Now, the most recent victim lost 3 rings in his car. If we could have a look at those. You've brought them in.
Yes, she removed from her fingers these 3 rings, or rings similar to these rings, because she thought that she may be robbed. She secreted these under her sleeve, but of course in the events that followed, they may have been shed into his car. If anybody has been offered rings of this kind, or knows of anybody who's acquired them recently, or been sold them, I'd be anxious to hear from them.
So you feel somebody around the Stockport area must know this man?
I'm confident that some mother, some wife, some girlfriend has a good idea who this man is, and I'm anxious to hear from that person before he humiliates any other woman.
Well, if you can help in any way, and particularly if you have any suspicions as to who that man is, please do call us here on 01 811 8055, or you can call the detectives in the incident room, and that's on 061 855 4904. That's 061, the code for Manchester, 855 4904.
Now, television's version of the Wanted poster, Crimewatch Photo Call. Tonight, 4 faces of people you might know or might have seen. Here to describe them, David Hatcher and Helen Phelps.
First, we'd like you to look at this man. His name is Raymond Burge, he's 53 and he comes from Taunton. He may have information which could help us solve nearly 200 cases of deception in almost every county in the country. Gyrobank Transcash forms have been used to buy goods for up to £60. The forms are really only paying in slips, but shopkeepers have been conned into taking them as payment. The most recent case was in Grimsby just last week. We think Raymond Burge may be able to help us with our inquiries. If you've seen him or know where he is, ring us now.
And do you know this man? He's pictured here robbing a Leeds building society in Prestwich, Manchester on the 19th of March when he produced a gun and demanded cash. His coat was dark blue and quilted. The hood seemed to be part of a separate dark blue cagoule, and his accent was local. But look again at his face, because we think that he was wearing a false nose. So don't let that distract you. If you can recognise him, give us a call.
Now the face of a man who may be able to help with inquiries into the murder of 20-year-old Richard Henvey. He was stabbed to death in a fight at the Empire Ballroom in Leicester Square 7 weeks ago. 1,700 people were at Radio London's Soul Night Out that evening. The rather poor quality security video shows one man who hasn't come forward yet, but who police think could have important information. This was recorded as he entered the building around 10 o'clock that night. If you recognise him, please ring us now.
And finally, Mr. Johan van der Vel. We'd like to speak to Mr. van der Vel in connection with a fraud. His catering company, J. van der Vel and Company, this is their calling card, has obtained £80,000 worth of goods without paying for them. Mr. van der Vel has disappeared and some of the smaller suppliers have lost a year's profit. The picture shows him on stage. We don't know what the show was or where it was on, but perhaps the other actors who happen to be in the photograph may be able to help us find him. Mr van der Velde was last seen near Ware in Hertfordshire. He has a South African accent, is a Keep Fit fanatic and claimed to be an arms dealer. If you know where he is, or if you recognise any of the other faces on tonight's photo call, there's the number 01 811 8055.
If you can help, the number again, 01 811 8055.
Tonight's final reconstruction is from Avon and Somerset, from the seaside town of Weston-Super-Mare. In the summer season, Weston is a hugely popular holiday resort, attracting families from throughout the British Isles. A large number of people have settled there to retire, and 2 months ago, a 66-year-old resident was attacked in a wood nearby and killed. It was a Saturday morning at the end of March, a time of year when local residents had the place largely to themselves. The bay and beach at Weston are spectacular. At the north end, the old town overlooks the sea, and above the houses is Walbury Hill. Once the site of an ancient fortress, it dominates the town. The dense woods here are a great attraction to walkers and explorers. Whether exercising dogs or riding horses, hundreds of people come here every day. It's Saturday, March the 28th. Down in Weston, number 38 Osborne Grove. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, and Helen Fleet is preparing for the day.
Windy weather seems to have turned around, but the London Weather Centre tell us that conditions will still be pretty miserable when the boat race starts in about 3 hours' time.
Helen was 66 and enjoying her retirement in the house that she and her sister Betty had bought 4 years before.
A new look at another cricket immortal, Dr. W.G. Grace, revealed in a new play called The Champion. But at 6 minutes past 9 o'clock, let's go down the river now.
Helen came originally from the north of England. She lived in Crewe until she was 18, just before the war. Helen joined the ATS and trained as a lorry driver. She then transferred to the Women's Royal Air Force. She fell in love with a Spitfire pilot who was killed in action over Italy. After the war, she married, but it didn't last. She married again, but 20 years ago was widowed. She found fulfillment when she took up a successful career organising trade exhibitions for an Oxfordshire engineering firm. In retirement, her greatest joy was her 2 small dogs.
Don't be a minute, loves. Can we go walkies? Be patient. Good boys.
But is there any activity on the river at the moment?
Morning, Helen.
Hello, dear.
Hello, dogs. Made some tea.
Will you be ready right after breakfast?
Yes.
Well, I'll drop you off on the way up to the woods.
Helen intended to go to Walbury Hill to walk the dogs, but her sister wanted to go shopping for a blouse. Helen promised to drop her off and then pick up some bread they needed.
And I might just buy you a couple of those donuts you're so fond of.
Having dropped Betty off as planned, Helen got to the baker's in Milton Road at about 10:30.
Bye, girls. Bye. 2 loaves and 2 of those lovely donuts, please.
To Eileen Fowler in the shop, Helen seemed her normal, cheery self.
Jam ones? Yes, please.
At 10:50, Helen was seen parking at Walbury Hill Road. She parked in her normal spot.
Come on, here we go. Walkie walkies, come on, Bilbo, Cindy.
Helen walked the dogs here twice a day, normally for over an hour. She suffered from emphysema, so she got tired quickly, but she still covered her usual route of about a mile. On a March morning, nearly everyone in the woods would be riding horses or, like Helen, walking dogs. But at around 11:30, these 2 girls noticed a young man in a ski jacket walking alone. 50 minutes later, at about 12:20, Helen was nearing the end of her walk. About then, 3 separate witnesses heard a series of piercing screams. About the same time, below the woods, a boy almost fell over. He was running so fast down Prescott Close. 20 minutes later, a friend of Helen's, Sylvia Lewis, was starting her walk. As she let her dog off the lead, she saw Helen's two running free.
Oh, hello, Cindy. Hello, Bilbo. Hello. Come on. Hey, where's Helen, then? Where's Helen? Come on, show me where she is. Helen? Helen?
50 yards away, a boy in an anorak was seen by a witness who was waiting for a bus to leave.
But you'd have to wait until the, my leaving time, which is about 4 minutes.
Oh, thank you.
Cindy? Cindy? Hiya, Helen. Cindy? Oh, I don't know what... Oh, my God. Wait, please. Can somebody help me? It's my friend. She's lying in the wood. I think she's been attacked.
All right,
Please, could you come and help me?
I'll see what I can do.
Helen had been beaten, she'd been stabbed and strangled. Investigating officer is Ray Sargentson. Not only a very, very violent attack on her, but apparently quite motiveless.
That's right, a very vicious attack on a frail lady, totally unable to defend herself, who in addition to being stabbed, beaten about the body, was also strangled.
Now, the great priority, obviously, is to find those young men in anorak, ski jackets or whatever, who were in the wood on that day, haven't yet been interviewed.
Yes, indeed, yes.
It's Saturday the 28th of May. Obviously, all young people who are in that wood, anybody under the age of, what, 22, 23, should come forward.
Yes, anybody in the wood. On the 28th of March, who was in the wood during the times of between 10:45 and 12:30 should come forward. With a large number of people that we haven't yet traced, who we know were in the woods during the time.
I gather there's something like 70 people who are in the woods, you think, who haven't yet come forward.
That's right. From other statements of other witnesses, they've told us of descriptions of persons walking dogs. We have not traced up to 70 people who are in the woods on the morning of the 28th of March.
Right, and in fact, I know you're trying to trace another young man and very badly need him to come forward who was seen 2 days earlier on the Thursday.
Yes, we traced a witness about the 6th week of the inquiry who spoke to the deceased 2 days before her death in Worldby Woods. He was asking the whereabouts of some of his workmen.
He was driving a van?
He was driving a van, and Mrs. Fleet was stood there, and nearby was a youth, and this is the only sighting we've ever got of the deceased with a single youth. She basically only spoke to other persons walking dogs.
Right, this is about 4:10 on Thursday, 26th of March.
Yes, that's right.
Now, obviously, somebody may have suspicions about somebody. You've got a video fit, actually, a computer-enhanced video fit of that youngster who was seen 2 days before. We don't know that that guy has anything to do with the crime. You just want to eliminate him, yeah?
Yes, certainly do. He's a very important witness. He's been seen speaking to the deceased, and we clearly do want to eliminate him from the inquiry.
Somebody, of course, may be shielding someone. They may have suspicions about someone who acted oddly.
Yes, the viciousness of the murder lead us to believe that somebody will be acting in an irrational or unusual manner, and we plead to anybody who knows any person, whether in their family or not, to come forward and supply us with the information.
All right, incidentally, I might say that when we did that reconstruction, you heard all those screams, nobody rang the police and nobody came to investigate. Let me also say, incidentally, the 2 dogs have been found a good home. Don't ring us about that. But if you've any suspicions about who might have done this thing, terribly important you act quickly. Please do call us. You can speak to a BBC researcher if you prefer. The number, of course, 01811 8055, or dial the incident room at Weston-Super-Mare, Weston-Super-Mare 25411. That's 0934, the code for Weston-Super-Mare, 25411.
Well, if you haven't been able to get through tonight yet, our lines have been busy, but please do keep trying. You can call one of the local numbers, they're all on CFAX 186, or write to us at Crimewatch UK, BBC Television, London W12 HQT. And I've just heard that on the case of the Stockport rapist, we understand there's been another rape in that area tonight. So that's vitally important, and we'll be keeping you posted on what's happened there.
We'll be back with any more developments on tonight's cases in about an hour's time. Crimewatch update at 11:45. If that's beyond your bedtime, we know Crimewatch can be rather frightening. We have concentrated on some pretty awful crimes tonight, but thankfully, believe me, these serious events really are very rare, so don't have nightmares. Do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.